Godtear, Fury of Dracula, and the Order 1886. This is staying in.
Talking of France, Chris, you did bring something back, and you prefaced this by saying it was a blast from the past.
Well, I said it was a blast from your past, Sam.
Oh, yeah, you said it was a blast from my past, and I said, and I thought mine and Chris's connected past, and he's like, no. And I was like, oh, my word. So it goes back further than how long Chris and I have known each other, which is nearly 20 years now.
Is it rap music?
No. Chris did not bring me back some French rap music. Think back to, you will know the story, think back to my primary school days. I've already mentioned, and Chris is going to have to keep this in the edit now, I've already mentioned a character from this series that is connected to this story.
No, you're going to have to, you're just going to have to tell me.
Okay, so Chris brought me back a packet of Pogs.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Are they back?
Well, this is the weird thing because we don't know. Chris and I looked at the packaging and it's still copyrighted 1994 World Pogs Federation. So either this pack has been sitting on a French shelf for close to 30 years nearly.
Yeah.
Or they just never renewed the copyright.
So you've got some Pogs now.
I've got some Pogs now, and I've not yet opened them, and I was going to open them on the show to see if that would be of any excitement or interest to anyone.
I think we need to explain to our listener what Pogs are? Because I know obviously you've spoken about in a previous episode that you famously introduced these to your school.
I did.
All right, listen, if you don't know what a Pog is, it's a small cardboard spherical cutout thing, and it's got art on it, and you play a game with them. Basically, they're collectible little circular cards with art on them, and you use something called a whammer or a keynie, depending on which one you subscribe to, and use that to play various games, most of which revolve around throwing the keynie at the pile of Pogs.
And which ones flip over, you then get to keep. Yeah. It was very cutthroat. So I'm going to open this pack of Pogs now.
Now, Sam, here's the thing. On the front package there, it says how many of the items are inside, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It certainly does.
As far as I can see, it doesn't have an S at the end.
Well, I assume that's because it's in French. So there might be a grammatical...
What? So the plural of Pogs, Pog, is 5 Pog.
Yeah.
This has rocked my world. I'll be honest with you. If that is actually the case, and I've been saying Pogs the entire time, I'm going to feel like I've got egg on my face. But if it's actually 5 Pog, 7 Pog...
Yeah, and it says on the back, Collection le 50 Pog.
50 Pog?
My Pog. So it comes in a cardboard box, but then there's another little packet inside of it.
Perfect.
I mean... The world is burning, eh? So I'm going to open up the pack and see... Oh, it feels like a paper pack, so it feels like it's all recyclable. It comes with a rule book. And, oh my God, these are different.
What?
These are not the Pogs I remember.
Sure.
Or maybe I used to think that Pogs had little, like, notches taken.
That was Tazo's.
That was Tazo's.
Or was that Tazo's? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they were weird.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, they are Pogs. I've got a classic white Pog with the Pog man on that just says
Hey, I recognise that art. I recognise that.
It's incredibly 1990s. There's another one with a Pog man leaping with his trainers on. Another with Pog man in a aeroplane. Another Pog man trying to hang upside down next to a bat. I suppose that way up. Do you know that? Do you know what the official name for someone who plays Pogs is, or plays Pog is?
It better not be what I think it is.
What do you think it is?
I think it's a Pogger.
It is a Pogger.
A Pogger?
Here we go, the official rules that I've never heard before for the first time in over 30 years.
I mean, would we be interested in Pogs coming
No.
back? We would, though, wouldn't we? We would. Come on. I've been saving up for a play. Well, not saving up, actually. I've been biding my time because I have not wanted to buy a PlayStation 5. All right? I know everyone's got a PlayStation 5. Out of all of us, we're all very lucky.
You don't need it.
You're right. I just don't need it. And the thing with it is I'm also always that idiot that buys the console about 2 weeks before they announce the revision. Like, it always happens. Like, you know, it'll always be like, oh, I'm on the DS wagon now. And then the light comes up. And I'm like, oh. So that's not going to be me this time. So instead, what I've been doing is going back to a few old games. And also, I've got a new piece of hardware that emulates old devices. I've been playing old games as well. Lots of old sort of pocket games. But I thought to myself, do you know what? There was a game I've wanted to play since the very beginning of the PlayStation 4. And that's a game called The Order 1886.
Oh. Yes, me too. I've always wanted to. And it's been one of those games where I'm like, it's either bound to be on PS Plus 1 month.
Right.
Or I'm bound to see it in CEX for, if not £1, underneath £1.
Close to that number. And here's the thing, folks. It's just maintained its value. It's still like 15 quid. You can get it digitally. I think recently it was down to like 12, 13. So anyway, I got it from a charity shop.
Somebody finally gave their copy up.
Yeah, somebody finally gave it up. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get that. So it was 7 quid in a charity shop. So if you're not aware of this one, this was released in very early 2015. So it was very early in the PlayStation 4's lifespan. That, by the way, folks, is 7 years ago. Very early in the PlayStation's life cycle. It was made by a company called Ready at Dawn, who went on to be purchased, I believe, by Oculus and started making a bunch of VR games. So don't really think we're going to be seeing a Ready at Dawn sequel, but my understanding is it was like a second party release. So in the way that like Ratchet and Clank is technically owned by a different company, but really it's a sort of PlayStation thing, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the era of do you remember Rise? Something of Rome, whatever it was, on the Xbox.
Oh, I remember. I think I was at the Eurogamer Expo when Rise was first announced.
Yep. Yeah, I think
so it was just when the Xbox One was coming out, wasn't it? Or...
Yeah, exactly. And it was it's that those early, for me, because I've seen everybody, all of us have seen quite a lot of console launches and we've been privileged to see lots and lots of different console generations. And the thing that I've come to realize is the stuff I really like are right at the beginning and right at the end of a console's lifespan, because the games that happen at the beginning of a game, they're always like either pushing the boat out in terms of visuals or some interesting trick that they're trying to get the system to do, or if they're right at the end, it's really interesting to see how developers who are working on more modern hardware are making limitations within the games that they have to make them run on older hardware. A great example of this is Dragon Age Inquisition, which did actually come out on 360 and looks like garbage on the 360, whereas on the X1 and the PlayStation 4 it looks absolutely fantastic. But they made it work. And it's really exciting to see how that works, right? It's really cool. It's the same sort of level of excitement that I get out of seeing The Witcher 3 running on Switch. It's where you go, oh, this should not be doing this. This should not be working as well as it actually is.
But the line where the games actually start on a generation of console is more blurred than ever now, because even however long the PS5 has been around. So like 2 years now, I want to say. Is it 2 years?
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah.
There's still, God of War Ragnarok is a PS4 and a PS5 day one release. And, Microsoft's approach is for everything to be available on everything at all times. Mm-hmm. The sequel to Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I feel like we will we ever see like a definitive start of like this is PS5, PS5 only?
It's over. The idea of a console generation and like having a really clear boundary, I think that's over now. And I think the PlayStation, the jump from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, you kind of saw it coming, because like the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 games, for the majority of them, you could notice there was some kind of graphical upgrade, but it wasn't like night and day like it was between PS3 and PS2. Like that was absolutely night and day. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to go back and play this thing, because I want to play this thing, see what it's like. So it is a cover-based shooter. So think Gears of War, or the shooting bits in Uncharted, it is set in a Victoriana steampunk world, in which you very, very quickly find out that there are these, I think they're called something like Inhumans or hybrids or something along those lines. Basically, they are animals, that they are werewolves and vampires, basically, but they look like human beings, right? And then they can transform. So that's kind of the setup and the visuals on this thing, and that is the reason that I was very, very excited to play this back in the early PS4 era. And just never got around to playing it. The visuals on this thing are amazing. Like, they still are genuinely kind of incredible to see. The amount of environmental detail is absurd. Like even now, I would suggest going back and seeing it and seeing the kind of level of architecture that they're able to deliver on, and it is amazing. So a good example of this is a lot of it is built around Arthurian legend. So this idea that there is a And again, this is kind of meted out over the game, over the course of the 7 or 8 hours that it will take you to finish this game. The idea is essentially that there are characters called Galahad and Lancelot, and they are kind of taking on the role of those characters from legend, and some other fun stuff that I won't spoil. So it's got a really interesting set of world building in terms of like how it all kind of gets started, and but this round table that they have is in London. And first little interesting side note: if you thought Assassin's Creed Syndicate was cheesy, their depiction of London is incredible. Like there are moments. Oh, like the voice acting is generally really good, but the enemies, some of the enemies are the most core blimey.
Stone the Crows.
Like, I mean, there's literally, like, I believe actually "Stone the Crows" is a phrase that they have in the game. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you're shooting at them and they're like, "Caw!"
They start every song by going, "Yo."
Yeah, exactly. So
they bleed jellied eels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Pearly King and Queen. They're the bosses.
Outside of the sort of enemies, the voice acting is absolutely superb. Like the main cast of characters is really well voice acted, and the storytelling is pretty good. Like the actual facial animations and stuff like that, the expressions that they're able to kind of get across, really, really effective. Again, the level of detail amazing. And as I say, in this round table that they have, which is set in London, you can go up to the surfaces of the walls, and every little section of it has meticulously detailed carved, lions, for example, or carved statues in the walls, and it's all perfectly bump mapped, and so that it's all kind of raised up, and it's just really, really intricately made, and you're just like, wow, this is amazing, like incredible. And the storytelling that they do through the environment is something to be seen, in the same way that something like Dear Esther has great storytelling through its environment, but you have to go and look at it. Like, there is no mechanical reason to engage with that kind of environmental storytelling. So it's not like something like Deus Ex, where there's like a flashing light on a little voice recorder, and the environmental storytelling is you go over to that thing, pick up the voice recorder, and it says, well, I'm going to have to change my password to blah, 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 blah. And then you can see, like, somebody's written, help us, in blood, in their own blood, right? That kind of stuff on the wall, right? It's
cut
not
off
that kind
their
of
limbs.
Yeah, cut off their limbs. Like, it's not that. But when you go and look at this stuff, it's really interesting. There's paper that, like, newspapers kind of swirling around, and when they land on the ground, you can see like little headlines and stuff. There's collectible items. The few bits of environmental storytelling where you can get some mechanical impact from them is there are some collectibles that you find. I'll come back to that in a second. But you can read these newspapers, and they're fully written out. Like each page is like fully written out, and the newspapers look really, really great, like really well written, and great world building in that way. The story itself is like fine, like it's a bit over the top and a little bit silly in places, but again the characterization is really good. So the plot is maybe not amazing, but the actual narrative itself, the characterization, that stuff is really well done.
Yeah. And
I was really put off playing this game in 2015 because I basically heard a load of people whinging about how it's very short.
Yes, I heard that.
Hours. It is 7 or 8 hours long. Personally, Brilliant. I don't think that's yeah, I've got a job. I'm all right. I'm more than willing to see the credits after 8 hours. Fine. So to me, it never really outstayed its welcome. But one of the criticisms of it that I didn't really understand at the time, and now I totally do, is when I say these collectibles and that they have this mechanical element to them of environmental storytelling, that's really important because mechanically, the game is super straightforward and very controlled. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like Rise, actually, in that same way, where they really want to control what you're doing because they really want to show off all of these visuals at all times and present the game in the best possible way, right?
Absolutely.
And they also want to have a great level of detail in their environment architecture, but because of that, they don't really want you to mess it up. So you can walk along the space, and yeah, every once in a while there'll be like a little glass bottle, and you'll ding your foot on that, and it'll roll across the thing. But like the rest of the space is like there's no destruction, there's no real destruction, there's no real interacting with anything, and more than that, the game is really a series of essentially straight lines that just so happen to be a little bit wibbly wobbly, that are just encounter. And they try and hide some of this by having like short paths off in a slightly different direction. But there's nothing down them. Like those collectibles, there's very few of them. So you'll go down a path and be like, you do that classic thing of like, you get into a space. I always do this. When you're playing a game,
go left.
There's always a left, and there's always a left, and there's always a right, and you always go right. Well, I'm going to go some distance down one of them, and if I haven't got to the end, then I'll probably double back and go down the other one because that'll probably be the dead end, right? Well, these distances are even shorter, and often there's just nothing down them. Like there's just nothing there. Like there's environmental storytelling, i.e., like here you are in a slum and here is some trash. But there's nothing to mechanically engage with, or very little to mechanically engage with, and it's really interesting that the game's greatest the time in which the game is mechanically at its best is actually in the final sequences, in which you are quite literally in a tunnel going from encounter to encounter, and the game just does away with any sense of trying to convince you that it's not that, and that is the point in which the game is at its purest and actually is at its most fun, because you're not going down a very short hallway only to be disappointed that literally nothing is there. You're just being funneled exactly to the exciting gun sequence, the exciting like combat sequence that you want to get into, because that gun combat is really good. The enemies are smart. The each of these weapons, by the way, I've never seen a more focused set of weapons to which I wouldn't look at any of them and go, you didn't need that one. Like they all have their purpose. They all feel brilliant to play with. Like, they all feel mechanically really fun to play with. As I say, the enemies are really, for the most part, really exciting to play against. They're quite smart, and there's interesting. The encounters are set up in such a way that you can actually tackle them in different ways. I mean, ultimately the way is shoot the enemies until they fall down, but there are different areas where you can attack these enemies from, and there is a little bit of mobility, though not nearly as much as something like an Uncharted. It's much more like a Gears of War, that kind of thing. But the thing that really put me, as I say, the thing that put me off was all these reviews, and I've been looking at the Metacritic score, and it was in the mid-60s.
Yeah.
This is a game that, let me tell you, if you see it for a tenner or 15 quid, right, it is a wonderful way to spend a couple of afternoons. They really don't make games like that very often because they are a product of the era in which they launch. They are these hyper-specialised just make the world look really, really amazing and show off the graphics of the PlayStation 4, this brand new PlayStation 4, and then have a competent game that's actually within it, right?
Love the hair.
Thanks very much.
I love the hair.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had one of the colleagues that I work with. They said that it was. They said that it was very peaky, which I didn't really know what that meant. But I think, but then
like
he went
Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders, yeah.
Not like Widow's Peaky.
Or you're looking a bit peaky there, Chris. I think you better sit down.
I had the other day, did I tell you, so I went to the barber's, and something happened to me in the barber's. It's never happened to me at any time I've got my hair cut. The guy was shaving the back of my head, but rather than him move, he just turned me like he's icing a cake. Like a full 360.
That's great.
I think that's pretty efficient.
So at one point, I was just staring outside the window into the streets, and people were just walking past, and I was just waving, "Hey!" But yeah, he literally just turned me like it was like a kebab.
Like it was a lazy Susan.
Yeah.
Talking of awkward hairdresser interactions, the other day I went for a haircut, and the hairdresser went, "Eyebrows?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Then he only did one, and I was like, what do I say now? Like, does he only think I needed one
Yeah,
kneading?
it's like Pogs and Pog, isn't it? It's eyebrow.
yeah. Chris, we've got to organise our dates for the diary.
We say,
Because let's see where we're up to. So obviously, Pete, you'll know this. A listener may not know it, but every year Chris and I get together, and what's special about this time that we get together every year, we'll pick a date and we'll say, right, that is going to be what we call a War Boys date.
War Boys.
And what's special about that date is we will only play war-themed or warfare kind of games.
Yeah.
So Memoir 44, V Commandos, Polis,
Undaunted
have been sort of the four that we've kind of floated around or sort of been rotating around for the past 3 or 4 years. In fact, this year will be War Boys 6, Chris.
Oh my word. The road to Valhalla.
6. I've actually got a box in my loft which is specifically for War Boys games, which is great because I only need to bring them out once a year. So I just go up. It's quite ceremonial now. But the other day we were together after you'd come back from France, and we were all excited because you'd finally got,
I can't believe it,
what might be a brand new entry into the War Boys canon.
Ooh.
Yeah, we have a canon. For my 35th birthday, so some years ago, you all very kindly, on Kickstarter, Hogs of War, the board game. And cue then months and months of Sam forwarding me emails from the Kickstarter campaign explaining where they were in the process, having a look at all these minis, shipping, all this kind of thing. And it arrived the other day. I went and picked it up from the depot in town from the Royal Mail, and it's huge.
It's well, to give Pete sort of an idea of how huge the game was. We thought that we'll just set it up and just like maybe play a round or two and just see how it is. About half an hour later, we were still setting up.
Ooh.
I mean, I made a massive mistake because I hadn't looked at the rules at all, Pete. We thought, we'll just learn as we go, won't we? Well, I actually said we'll just play one round. We didn't even get to that stage because the setup is epic, and we didn't feel it would be good for any of us to try, and it wouldn't be fair on the game makers and designers to try and learn as we go.
So I think we're going to we definitely are going to play it because by God, it's we've been waiting a long time to actually get it into our hands. But the game that we played in its absence was a game called Godtear, and this was a game that came in 5 boxes and had probably about the same amount of miniatures, but took about a 10th of the time to actually set up and actually get to the table.
Okay, that's good.
And again, it was one of those things where it was getting quite late in the evening, and I said to Chris, because I've played it before, and I said to Chris, I'll just introduce you to this, and we'll just play a few rounds and just see how we get on. Q2, an hour and a half later, Chris has absolutely pummeled me and taken me to the cleaners and wins the game. But Godtear is it was a Kickstarter game, but now it's available in full retail from Steam Forged Games, and they were kind enough to send us a lot of boxes, which I attempted to film in some coherent way on our Instagram feed, but I don't feel like I really did a very good job. So Godtear is, and Pete, you and I have spoken about this, and I think it's like a miniatures war game. Or like a miniature skirmish game. I don't know how would you quantify it, Chris, before Pete launches into a syntax.
It's more skirmishy for me, I would say.
I think the definitions of war game, skirmish game, all that sort of stuff are so broad at this point. I would say if you are into miniatures games, as in miniatures wargaming, I think you probably wouldn't think it was a skirmish game or a miniatures war game. Okay. But if you're a board gamer, you would absolutely be well within your right to say, yeah, it's a war game.
Okay.
Skirmish.
Well, let me explain how the game works, and then we'll move either away from that definition or we'll speed towards it uncontrollably. So how Godtear works is that you have this board covered in hexes. Along one side of this board, you have this ladder, which is separate different squares running from one player to another. And each player has 3 champions. Now, these champions are people who are going to go out of their way to collect these things called the Godtears. And they collect those by running to these specific hexes on the board, slamming their banner down on it, and if that banner is on that hex by the end of that turn, they get certain points and certain awards, and they get, the Godtear. And each of those champions also has a band of followers that will follow them. They're essentially like minions, and it'll either be like a group of skeletons or a group of centaurs, or I think Chris played with one character whose minions were a bunch of quartz rock, which are great because they could only move like three spaces in one straight line. They literally just like barrel rolled into play, which is quite thematic. I enjoyed that. And Godtear has so many wonderful ideas in it that it's one of those board games that I would love to recommend to everyone, and it's one of those ones I definitely would like to play with as many people as possible. But the more and more I will get into it and explain to you what it is, the more difficult I get in terms of the more harder it gets for me to actually really recommend it, and I'll explain why. Do
you mean to recommend it to a wide audience, or do you mean to recommend it to is it difficult to recommend it at all, or is it difficult to recommend it to a wide audience?
No, I think it's got a lot going for it, and everyone that I've played it with has had an absolute blast.
Right.
It's really peppy. It's really quick in terms of game starting and having fisticuffs and getting into the action. Like, it is exceptional for what it appears like on the surface, because how the game works is you have your champions and their minions. Each person has 3 each. You deploy them at the start, and you'll pick a scenario out the book, which gives some sort of light sort of flavor text to what's going on, tells you where the objective tiles are, which are the ones that the champions need to put their banners into. And it will also give some special rules cases for what happens at the end of each round, which I'll come back to. And then you decide who's going first or second, and then you put this little token on the ladder that's running on the side of the board. And how the game works is when you perform certain actions or do certain things in the game with your champions or your minions, as a player, you receive certain number of points. And for each point, that token moves closer to you. And at the end of the round, whoever has that token on their side of the board basically wins that round. And each round is worth a certain number of points, and it's the first player to 5. Now, this is the first thing that I really like about Godtear, is how it organises itself into rounds. Because as someone who has tried to get into miniatures gaming, and by this I mean full on like miniatures, like wargaming, the one thing that I've always found the most frustrating is, when is this going to end? And I don't mean that like in a bad way.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, like, I've played games of Blood Bowl that I thought were going to end in 5 minutes, but then went on for another 50.
Yeah.
Whereas in Godtear, you only play a maximum of 5 rounds, and because each round scores differently, the whole game could be over with an hour, but it's never going to go over an hour and a half. So, for example, the first round is worth 1 point, the second round is worth 2, the third round is worth 3 points, but the fourth round is worth 2 as well. So it could be all over by the third round, or it could be over by the fourth or fifth. So for me, that's a really nice proposal in terms of, we're going to have this, sorry Pete, like skirmishy battle, rolling dice, moving all these really lovely miniatures all over the place. And I know it's going to be 90 minutes tops. Love that. And then the actual like game itself, how it actually operates, everyone starts off with a plot phase, and that is each player will move and activate all their champions and all their minions, and then the other player will move and activate and activate certain skills on their minions. And then you have the clash phase, where each player takes it in turns to activate one specific group of minions or one specific champion. And everything is so wonderfully laid out that you've got these cards in front of you which tell you, like, you know, how far a character can move, what their armor is, what their dodge is, you know, how hard they hit. It lists all the skills that they can do through each phase. And then when you finish with that character on that phase, you flip over the card and it gives you all the things that they can do when they're fighting, when they're involved in combat. So it's really easy again to know, right, what have I done with that? Yeah, I've activated that one and that one and that one, and now I'm moving on to this one, which is the other thing that always really got me on, playing miniatures games. Sometimes it does very quickly get very soupy in terms of, right, who have I activated and which ones am I doing with that? And the other thing that I really, really like is that the scenarios are actually really well suited to bring out the best in the game. So I've played 2 of the scenarios. I played one called Life and one called Death. So the one called Life, what happens is, at the end of the round, if you've lost that round, then you get to choose 2 hexes where 2 more objective markers can go on. So you go from this position of having only 4 hexes in the middle of the board, which everyone's trying to fight over, to then suddenly having this like sprawling city of objective hexes that somehow you've got to try and defend or block or challenge for. And Chris and I played one called Death, which is the inverse of that. So we started off with 10 hexes, and by the end of the game, it ended up with just 2. So we went from a position where we had 3 basically objective spaces that we were all spreading our champions far and wide to head towards, to then just having 2 in the center of the table that we were all just like throwing our lot in, trying to absolutely grab. And I really like that even the board felt alive, like it was responding to what we were doing and forcing us to have to think differently about how we were going to use that plot phase. How are we going to use these skills? How are we going to use these different things that we've got at our advantage? And it's really good.
It's lean, it's mean, the board is nice and tight, the card descriptors and the iconography is very clean and very clear. And me, when I was playing it, Pete, I was really tired. I had a headache.
You were, Chris.
But it hooked me. And in my head, I was thinking, right, should I say to Sam, we'll just play a round and I'll move? Actually, no, I'll just say we'll play 3 rounds and then I'll hit tracks. I'll make tracks. We played the full 5 rounds, and I was hooked because very quickly in my fatigued state, I could see how very clearly cards could combine with each other, the order of cards, and how the different factions would complement each other. Very clear and really, really satisfying as a consequence, really. And we were just on your kitchen table. Doesn't take up much space at all.
Yep.
And get that really chunky feeling of moving miniatures around. And the miniatures are great, by the way, across these different hexes, but in a very tight and efficient manner. Loved it. Very clean. There's not a single ounce of fat on this game whatsoever.
No.
It reminds me a lot of kind of like a mix between like DOTA and a game called Warhammer Underworlds, which was still is actually. Yeah, and maybe this is what this is. Maybe what this is a competitive miniatures game, and that's what Games Workshop markets it as. And there's a lot of the same sort of beats that you're talking about here. Limited number of turns, like smaller player count, objective-based gameplay. Very quickly understanding the theme of what it is that you're doing and whether or not you've activated the thing. Like, and it's seen as a kind of rather unfairly seen as a bit of a gateway game into like the hobby proper. But actually, it's a really good game in and of itself. And this kind of seems certainly not the same, but this seems like that kind of genre of tabletop game whereby it's not as kludgy and crunchy and all that sort of stuff as like a more traditional war game.
That Dota analogy is really interesting, because that's the thing that really struck me, especially when we were playing the death scenario, Chris, because we almost had 3 lanes where we had champions one-on-one in specific lanes battling each other. And you know, there are champions that specifically have boons if they go after followers, like they're essentially like minion beaters, which is the same in like Dota and things like League of Legends,
Play your role.
where you have character classes that specifically go against like just thinning out the minions.
Yeah.
I started this by saying that this came in 5 boxes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I've just seen there's a starter set. Can I just get that and then get on?
I wish I could say yes,
but
the starter set I don't think does a very good job of selling this game and how brilliant this game is at all.
So what would you say I would actually need to understand this game?
So you'd need the full. So the 5 boxes, what Steamforge sent us, is everything you need to play the full game.
So we're talking about a starter set, and then what? 4? What are they? Expansions?
Then 4. Then 4 like champion expansions.
Okay,
basically
to play the full, or to get the best experience, or
to get the best experience. So it's recommended that you play a 3-on-3 champions battle. In the starter set, you get 2 champions, and I played the starter set obviously just to learn the rules and get going. And I guess for learning the rules, it's fine, but the game feels very lackluster for that experience, because there's no strategy, there's no depth. You're just walking up to another character and rolling dice and seeing what the outcome is. You can't really develop a grand plan. You can't really work off each other in terms of trying to work out what each other's going to do, what play are they going to make, where are they going to hit, who are they going to go after. There's none of that. You're just 2 people windmilling in a playground. Like it just feels completely flat as an experience. When you add the other characters, then suddenly it just springs into life, and suddenly it's just like, you know, it's like the hooves in Princess Mononoke. It's touching the ground, and suddenly everything just becomes verdant and lovely and full of life. And then as soon as the foot goes away, it dies and withers on the vine. And it was a bit crushing for me when, you know, I played the full game and really enjoyed it so much, because first of all, there's a question of space. So to play this game, I need to keep 5 boxes in my house. Very sorry to all the Steamforge fans. I've now cut out the insert to the starter set and just thrown all the miniatures loose in the box.
Excellent.
Yep.
And is that just to save on space?
It's just to save on space.
Yeah.
And because the 4 boxes together are probably like 2 of the start sets on top of each other.
Right.
So it's like 3 times. It's like having 3 like board game boxes.
This is why I'm like, this doesn't quite feel like a miniatures game, because a miniatures player is sat here going, yeah, so. because that we'd just bin that stuff. We're just like, yeah, no, we don't need this. We just need the miniatures is the thing. Which we'll put them in their own little special carry case or wherever it is. Like, you can chuck the rest of the box. This isn't a problem. Whereas the thing you're describing is how I feel about incomplete board games, where I'm like, I know I can play the whole thing, but because there isn't the insert that was provided, it feels like it's not the whole thing anymore.
Yeah. So the space is the one condition, and then the other is the price.
Okay.
And so for a starter set, you're looking for about 30 quid.
That's yeah.
And then for each of these extra champions, about 20 quid.
Right. Again, this is a board game. Because again, the miniature wargamer in me is like, ooh, how much are we talking about here? That sounds like £200 or £300 worth of stuff. Like, and you're like, well, you might have to spend, coming up on 50, maybe £70 for a great game with all these great expansions. I mean, that is expensive for a board game, and obviously, expense is obviously relative. I'm not trying to make light of that, but like, again, for a miniatures game, I'm sort of sat here like, okay, like that doesn't.
I think what disappoints me most is that as a value proposition, if the starter set was the full 3-on-3 experience for 100 quid, I'd be like, it's a hefty price, but by word, it's worth it if you can afford it.
Yeah.
What is difficult is trying to recommend it to people by saying, trust me, get the starter set plus these 4 other things.
Yeah.
And because I don't feel like if you just played the starter set, you'd want to then go on and buy the 4 other things. Trusting us or me or anyone else who's got an opinion about these things becomes very, very difficult. There is a way that you can limit the cost. So there's 2 different starter sets. So you could get both of them for 60 quid, and then you only need 2 other champions, and that you get the benefit of 2 different boards. So you have 4 different maps because the boards are double-sided. But yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know where I am with the game, because it's like, everyone I played it with had an absolute blast. I'm keeping it. It's in my collection, which is a very prestigious place to be. It's all rattling around in one box, but I fully intend to pull this out again and play it. But but yeah, it's like, I don't know who I'd recommend it to.
Do you know what will save on shelf space, Sam?
What's that, Chris?
Renting board games.
Oh.
So I don't know if you saw, I put a little post on the Instagram page. We were contacted some time ago by a brand new company, Rent, Shuffle and Roll. So that's rentshuffleandroll.co.uk. It's a fantastic name. And they are really making the most of that kind of it's not really kind of post-pandemic world we're currently living in. And
because you rented games in the pan, didn't you?
Like my local board game cafe, Board Beans in Northwich, they did a board game rental service when like all businesses were really kind of shut in town. And it was fantastic. So, Fraser and Betsy would have like this online list of games, and you go, can I have this, this and this? And then I just pay a rolling subscription and they literally deliver them to my door. I've got this with Rent, Shuffle and Roll now. And if you go on their website, you can kind of see it. It's a very clean and very well presented website that takes you through the process. I've gone in paying about 15 quid a month. That gets me 4 credits a month. That's the kind of lower tier. So it's like, I'm signing up to a streaming service that's kind of analog as opposed to digital. And they've got this extensive list of board games, lots of kids' games as well, which is pretty good. And each, depending on the weighting of the game, a little bit like the BGG weighting, they've assigned a credit rating to it. So your small games, like little card games, micro games, 1 credit. Your bigger, heavier games, 3 to 4 credits. Okay. So I've got my credits. I pick the games I want. They arrive in the post, in a parcel. And as you can see in the video I put on our Instagram page, I've got some nice coasters, got some Haribo, but also I get the label to post it back and the tape to seal the box. And that's just fantastic. So they've literally taken out every fiddly aspect of the process. I'm given the date in which I need to post it back. Everything goes back in the box. I use the tape to seal it up, take it to my post office, off it goes. I pick my next selection of games.
Sorry, so this is giving me Love Film vibes. So it's basically, there's a website, you go on, I want that, send it to me, they send it to you, you play it, you send it back, you get in the next one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's amazing, and I'm like, they've not paid me to do this. They've not given me anything for this. Literally, they just wanted to share the love, which, you know, it's a very friendly community, board gaming, saying, you know, you guys are board gamers, you might like to partake in this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chris, we don't know whether that bag of Haribo was standard or that.
Yeah, what level of Haribo are we talking about here?
Oh, Star Mix. A little bag of Star.
Yeah, but are we talking small bag?
Small bag of Star.
Or
small bag.
What, like a tea?
Okay, small bag. That's
one
not
credit.
bribery. No,
that's fine. Yeah, that's. I'm pretty sure that passes the journalistic ethics code.
A big Tang Fastix, and that would be questionable.
I'd be creating hate-fueled Twitter campaigns.
Can I just point out from Chris's video that I did have a moment where he was like, "Oh yeah, and here I can't do the voice. Oh yeah, and here's the tape that they give you to wrap it up." And I was like, "How do you tape up the box and then put the tape back in the box?" Until then, I realised you just cut off the tape that you need to tape it down with, and then put the tape back in the box.
Do you know what? Hopefully, this website is pretty clean, because I don't think Sam's going to be able to navigate it otherwise. So I mean, the thing with Love Film that I always loved about Love Film is that because I was, you know, OG. What I loved about Love Film is, at a time in which I gave a toss about them, it pushed me to watch movies that would kind of be outside of my comfort zone. So that's how I found stuff like Rashomon, for example, and realised I really like Kurosawa. What do you get exactly what you want? Or is it like, here's my wish list, send me and here's the order in which I want them? Or how do you do that?
So at the moment, it's you get exactly what you want. So it tells you, like, I'm on the website now, rentshuffleandroll.co.uk, and it says, okay, abandon all artichokes, which Sam spoke about in a previous pod, is out of stock. Yeah, that's one credit. Above and below, 3 credits out of stock. So I can imagine what would happen would be, okay, I've got 4 credits. I'm going to just get lots of 1 credit games. Well, 4 to be exact. I found 3 that I really want. Oh, and that 4th one's out of stock. Oh, I'll just find any 1 credit game just to fill the quota. Yeah. And I think I'm more likely to take a punt just by dint of the fact that it's a rental service. It's a try before you buy, which is something I bought a few games based on ones I'd rented previously. And in fact, as we're recording, my attention has been divided because I'm in the process of bidding on eBay for a second-hand copy of Fury of Dracula, which is really hard to get a copy of.
Hold on. So you played the classic early 80s Games Workshop game Fury of Dracula.
So that was the Fury of Dracula, I think. This is the 3rd edition of that from 2015. That went from
it's a Fantasy
Flight.
It
went from Games Workshop to Fantasy Flight, and now the 4th edition is WizKids, and now nobody really knows who has the rights anymore.
So the people who own the rights are GW. So GW owns the rights to this, and they after the deal with Fantasy Flight went away, I think WizKids are the ones that picked that one up afterwards. But this is the hidden movement one.
Oh my word! And it's meant to be for 4 players versus 1 of you being Dracula, 4 of you being the hunters. Yes, it's hidden movement, so at least one of in a hidden movement game, at least one of the players is moving in secret. Their playing piece is not on the board, and they're keeping a secret record or a note of where they are, and the other players have to deduce where they are on the board. And we've played loads of these. Sam's introduced me to Letters from Whitechapel, which we've spoken about in the previous episode of the pod.
Yeah, great.
I love a hidden movement game. Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space. I love that sensation. Yeah. So in Fury of Dracula, as you say, Pete, one of you is Dracula, who is trying to hide in Europe and buying themselves enough time to amass a huge degree of influence, creating vampires. And they have a track, and they put their location cards face down there, and every time they move their previous location 1 stage to the right. And any time one of my hunters goes to a location where they've been, they flip over that card, so I can kind of work out roughly where they are. If they ever go to sea, they put a blue card face down. So I know they're at sea, but I don't know where. And it's all about me trying to find their lairs, destroy their vampires before they fall off the edge of the board and mature, and to try and, with my hunters, corner Dracula and weaken him. And then when you get to combat, it's just playing cards. And hopefully I've got enough equipment there by that point to chip away at Dracula before he escapes, and I have to corner him somewhere else in Europe. It is so thematic. And I'm not somebody who's wholly wedded to the Dracula mythos. I am going to start reading the original Stoker's Dracula this summer. I'm going to find myself a nice audiobook of it and just go on.
Have you read it before?
I've never read it before in my life.
Oh, Chris, it's a classic. Oh, it's so good.
So I'm fully invested in this now, and it is that classic Dracula look. If you look on the front cover in this 3rd and 4th edition, it's the old school Dracula, post Nosferatu, pre Twilight kind of Dracula, and you are playing as the hunters from the novels. There's Mina Harker, there's Van Helsing, yes. There's Godalming. There's Doctor. Oh gosh,
Chris Darby. Can I just say, like, Chris keeps you keep sending me pictures of you playing this game, which is not really like you unless you really, really like something. I mean, have I ever been invited to play it? No, I haven't ever been invited to play it. But in terms of like those signs that I look for when I know that you're really enjoying it, first of all, nearly falling asleep but sticking to the end, which you must be enjoying it. Yep. Sending me unsolicited board game picks.
Board game, yeah.
Definitely enjoying it. Or just requesting to play it.
I can introduce another one, Sam. I played 2 games in a row yesterday, which you know me. I never do that.
Yeah. Really? Oh, for heaven's
but that's
sake.
because I lost both of them, and I lost so badly in the first one. And I'm not afraid to admit it. You're my mates, but generally, if I play a brand new game and I lose, I have to really silence that inner voice that tells me the game's crap. Yeah. Because Sam will know this about me. He can pick it up on me. Generally, it's this whiff of me, and I have to. And it's so immature. It's so childish, and particularly when I'm playing against Sam or my mate Matt, who I was playing Fury of Dracula with, who are really good, good winners, and I have to say, I'm not competitive, but I really feel it. And like twice, I was like, oh, why is it you're so overpowered? He says, yeah, I'm Dracula. Yeah. And I'm playing as 4 hunters. And bearing in mind, I've got an advantage. You're not meant to play it the way I was playing it. It's meant to be 4 other players with their cards, which they don't really show to each other, and trying to corner Dracula in Europe. And I played all 4 hunters at once, which is not how you're meant to play it. So I had 4 sets of cards going for them each in turn. I still couldn't win. But even though I'm not very good at it, it's so... Once you get that whiff of Dracula, he was here. Okay. Yeah. He's going this way here. He's at...
that was the abandoned name, wasn't it? When they finally settled on Fury, you could just see on the whiteboard, whiff of Dracula crossed
the new fragrance.
Yeah.
But yeah, but if it wasn't for Rent, Shuffle and Roll, because it's a game I've always wanted to play for years, but trying to find a copy of it. Yeah. Again, as we were talking about before with Godtear, like, do I really want to invest in a game that I don't know if I'm going to like it or not? That's why a board game cafe is perfect. Or if you want to play it at home, that's why a board game rental facility is perfect. So thanks to Rent, Shuffle and Roll, I am now on a long eBay bid. I've just put in another offer for a second-hand copy of Fury of Dracula, which is like gold dust at the moment to try and find. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So fingers crossed, I'll get it. And knowing my luck, I'll probably be bored of it or something. I don't know.
Look, I haven't had a response yet from Defra. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's every 2 weeks, Pete. Remember.
Every 2 weeks. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Every once a month, isn't it? That's it.
If I don't, yeah, exactly. We do it once a month. So I haven't heard anything back, but I am taking suggestions for. I am taking suggestions in for other sorts of investigations that I can do. stayinginpod@gmail.com.
Do you know, Pete? I spoke to my sister about your email. I said, Pete's emailed Defra, and she looked at me like, Defra? My sister's a vet, and she gets regular email updates from Defra around, I don't know, bird flu, possible instances of foot and mouth, all this kinds of thing. So she was like, why is he emailing Defra? And I said, well, He wants to know if you should put biscuits in the fridge. And the look she gave me told me that perhaps they might be quite busy with other things. Perhaps you don't know.
I've been told that the email has been forwarded to the appropriate people.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So
some intern somewhere.
Some intern, yeah. Some poor intern.
I think. Can you just send the email to McVitie? Can we
cut the middleman out?
Can we circumvent DEFRA?
Let's just assume that someone at DEFRA may get back to us at some point. That would be great. But can we just cover our bases and email maybe McVitie?
Okay, I'll email McVitie.
What they have to say.
Which way up you should eat the biscuit?
That's fine. So I might ask that one as well. Actually,
P.S.
Which way up? It's P.S. Yeah. So stayinpod@gmail.com is the email address to send us bits and pieces to, and also other questions and stuff like that, of which we have one.
Really?
Do we?
We have an email from Robin Z. Hello, Robin.
Hello, indeed.
Okay. Hi, Robin.
And Robin says...
Robin Z or Robin Z?
I always say Z, but I know it's meant to be Z. I know. Don't.
Okay.
I've had enough from you, Sam, and I should eat things in a certain order. I'm not going to change the way that I say the letters of the alphabet. It's too late, all right? It's too late. So, listening to the morning movie debate... so this was the, should you even...
Oh, yeah, because I went to go and see Thor, Love and Thunder at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. And a question popped in my mind. Since you're all expert movie patrons, what is the best candy pairing with popcorn? What portions of each makes the perfect mix? How do you mix the two? For example, pour into the tub, or a handful of this and a handful of that. And then there's a couple of other questions here which we'll get to in good order. So for me... I
have the definitive answer. So
yeah, go on then. What is it? Because I don't like mixing popcorn and candy. What's the definitive answer?
So I never did, but my wife introduced me to it. So what a woman. So the definitive answer is M&Ms, and you'll probably want a bag of M&Ms to like a grab bag, one of the biggish sort
bigger
of bags,
yeah.
Per medium popcorn.
Right.
Now the important thing here is the delivery. It's the infusion of the M&Ms. Okay. I'd also say Magic Stars, but I like the texture differential between the popcorn and the M&Ms, which is quite.
Magic Stars are my number one because the points snag on the popcorn in a really nice manner.
I think there's something to be said with Mars chocolate combining well with cinema popcorn. I think that's probably the kicker here in this conversation. But what really is important, the combination is by the by. Like chocolate and popcorn is just a great, wonderful mix. What is really important is how you combine the two. Because do not, and I've done this a few times and it ruins your experience, do not throw them all in at once. Do not.
Less is more.
Half bag. So whether that's a small little one-on-one bag or a big bag, half bag in. So you put your half bag on top and then just put your hand into the bag of popcorn and ruffle around. I mean, post-pan, this is, make sure you're doing it with someone that you love or your own hands, whatever, clean, sanitize before and after. And then when you're halfway down the popcorn, then introduce other half of bag. Because otherwise what happens is M&Ms and Magic Stars are denser and heavier than the popcorn around them. They descend it's a bit like quicksand. As you're rooting around for said M&Ms and Magic Stars to add more boost to your bite, they will just descend to the bottom, and then you end up with basically a bunch of popcorn kernels and some M&Ms.
Or for me, just unwrap like a load of cream eggs and just chuck them in.
Oh, this is disgusting. I don't have popcorn.
Pete, what was yours?
I don't have popcorn with candy. I'm a traditionalist.
Okay.
So,
well, traditionally,
what? No, okay. Traditionally, eat your bloody popcorn. Which is the best standard movie popcorn? Without butter, with butter, or kettle corn?
Okay.
So, I think
we don't have any of those in this country.
So we make. So I'm a traditionalist, and we make. Yeah, we make popcorn at home, and we use and we use butter, and it is absolutely delicious for it. Nice little bit of ever so slightly salted butter, and then a little bit of sugar. And
it's just like toast before bed for you, though, isn't it?
It's delicious. Oh yeah, it is. But
popcorn.
But don't put the whole pat in at once. Just remembering Sam's.
No, just be clear. Do not put the whole lot in. We don't really do kettle corn. And then thoughts on caramel popcorn, for it or against it. Now again, I'm a traditionalist. I am heavily against the caramel popcorn. I absolutely hate caramel
you
popcorn.
You sent us that when we left yours in Bristol. You would not have that popcorn in your flat.
We had some caramel popcorn that we got, and I was like, get it out of my house. I'm pretty good with like food. I really enjoy trying lots and lots of different kinds of
as long as it's all
food.
really separate.
Yeah, as long as it's really separate and I can do it in the right order. But with popcorn, I'm very. There is a right way, and it is.
No, I love a Butterkiss toffee.
It's a classic.
Oh, it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
One of my the other day when Chris and I were going to no, what was it? Who did I go to the cinema with? It's either Chris or Lisa. Yeah, no, that's it. We went to go and see Top Gun with Chris and Lisa.
Worlds collided.
And I had a popcorn and M&M mix there. And when I was leaving there, I was like, "Oh, I've had a bit of popcorn stuck in my teeth since the start of the movie." And my wife was just like, "Oh, that must have been awful." And I was just like, "Yeah, no matter how much more popcorn and M&Ms I ate, just nothing would make it budge."
Right. So anyway, well, if what you're after is more enlightenment, then please stayinginpod@gmail.com, like Robin did. Thank you very much for that, Robin. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Robin.
Like that. If, however, you don't want to send us a question, do tell a friend about the podcast. That's the easiest way. Yeah. Send them this one. This one's a pretty good onboarder, I would say. Sure.
I think so, yeah.
Sure, Dan's not here, but then there's that extra special gift of when Dan's back. So, like, even more friends to introduce oneself to. So, yeah, there you go. And if you do want to leave us a little review and a rating on wherever it is that you get your podcast, then do please do that too.
Before we go, just to say that we're going on holiday all together next week for the first time in 2 years.
Yes.
So the next show is going to be the stories that we're going to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had a quiet weekend together playing board games.
How long did it take Pete to get home?
Oh, that's going to be a disaster, isn't it? Is there a hot tub at this place?
Yeah.
There is, and it's sunken. So you walk into it rather than getting a ladder.
Or you dive
Getting a ladder?
Yeah. So look forward to that. And
we will post pictures.
We'll post pictures up on the Soch, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You know how to find people. Just Google us. And that's about it, really. Thanks very much. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.